We are here to bring you everything and anything surrounding Porsche. I'm Mike.
I'm Aaron.
And this is PCar Talk. Welcome to PCar Talk. I'm Mike.
And I'm Aaron.
And we are back in the studio. We want to thank JRZ for being an ultimate sponsor for us. My suspension is getting made right now for the Turbo S. I'm crazy excited. Excuse me.
Expensive and excited.
Yeah,
all at the same time.
It is expensive, but I'm excited. It's going to transform the car, right?
100%. What are you running now? You're not running anything right?
Just the roof, coils.
So there's some suspension tuning.
Yeah, but I mean, they really, and I have H&Rs on the backside, and they have Tarek fucking drop links. Like, it's going to be.
So it's, I mean, you'll notice a difference.
It's complementing what they're making. They're making a 3-way pro suspension that's going to have external reservoirs on it. It's going to be lightning, and it's going to be a flex too, because we're going to put it on the half cage, and it's for everybody to see, Mike style.
Well, and that's a good point too. Is it gives you a comparison whether something you have that's already a coilover to what you have now, at least the adjustability and all that.
Yeah. I think the nice part, like you said, we're going to be in the mountains, so it'll be softer on the way up. Yep. And once I'm there, I'll dial it up externally. And if you don't know about JRZ, they're pretty much the enthusiast spec for the stuff. And they do overlanding, they do everything. So they're pretty much top notch is the best way I can explain it. But literally everybody that I know that is a pro racer that races stuff and then goes off-road, they're running JRZ.
I'm seeing it too.
So even aftermarket, like on resale, they have a huge resale volume because they're so good. Yeah. And we appreciate them being a sponsor of the show because they're a major flex for us, and we appreciate you guys listening to that. So let's get rolling. So
let's do it.
News, which is kind of shocking in a way, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to give the disclaimer. $20,000 a month to lease 3 vehicles. I'm going to let you ponder for a minute. 3 vehicles. What could they be? And of course, it's the Porsche podcast. So they're going to be Porsches.
3 Porsches is what I'm thinking.
Wow, I'm going to pay $20,000 a month. What could that be? I don't have no idea. So there's a Connecticut-based company who's offering this opportunity for whichever individual, whoever's interested. So the 3 vehicles, I'm going to not hold you too much in suspense. 1958 Speedster, stunning car.
Yeah.
To begin with.
Untouchable.
So that's vehicle number 1. $3,750 a month. Only $67,000 down. Next vehicle. 1973 911 2.7 RS, like an OG. $5,869 a month. Only $110,000 down. Next vehicle. Number 3 on the list. 918 Spider. Only $7,925 a month. $7,250 a month. With only $175,000 down. So that equal for 60 months. So they're offering this. The interesting thing about this, most of the listeners are probably listening like, who in the F would want to do this?
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of 1%ers that have grown to that class has probably become 10%ers that make a lot of money. And if you don't want to pay an asinine money in taxes, maybe you want to lease these cars, because this is what this is a lease offering. However, with that being said, you're looking at putting basically $350,000 down initially, and then you're paying 20 G's a month for these vehicles.
Do they cover any warranty stuff, or do they cover any services or any of that stuff, or is it just I just put money down?
That is TMU, true mileage unknown, my friend. Not listed, hasn't really said what it was, but however, they have listed to say you have an opportunity to own these vehicles at the end of your lease term.
Okay, so it's
if you want to possibly balloon payment at the end. However, I find this to be interesting because it sounds to us, because we're regular middle of the guys. Yeah. I would imagine, I don't want to speculate on demographic of the people that listen to us, but majority of the probably listeners are going to pay $20,000 a month on a vehicle. However, this place, the leasing company, says, well, if you don't want to take the initial hit, and they have some argument rights, which obviously somebody, at least with average education, has put this together, has said like, well, if you're a wealthy guy or pseudo wealthy, and maybe you're into new money, you don't know what you want, but you're a Porsche person.
Yeah.
So here we are, like maybe you get to taste the flavors. Maybe you like something super vintage. Maybe you like something mid-year. Maybe you like something new. And at the end of your lease, you can buy all three. Maybe you can buy one or none. And maybe it was just a flex for you at that time. And maybe after 60 months, you're not interested any longer. And you can move about your business and move on because maybe $350,000 isn't that big of a deal for you. Initial upfront payment and the initial $20,000 a month for 60 months, whatever. I don't know whose ever financial situation is interested in this type of thing. However, it does prey on some things where maybe if you're into new money or maybe your old money and you maybe see your life expiring, and you just saved all those lives. And we know people just like this. They've saved all their lives. And they're like, well, one of these days, and we've all heard that saying, one of these days, I'm going to
do something.
I'm going to do X.
Yeah. So they give you the option to rent. Like I could rent one, or I could lease one of these cars, or at least all three at the same time.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
But if I wanted to, I could drop 400 and some thousand initially, and then whatever it is per month.
Of course. So... And they're not denying at any point where you could just go out and buy these things outright and probably spend less or equal money.
Yeah.
But what their argument is saying is if you're a position in a person like who's maybe come into money or has sat on money for a long time, which we have relatives, you and I both, that haven't bought anything for themselves for a very, very long time. And maybe they're in a position in their life to say like, hey, I know my time's expiring. I want to have some fun. I want to do some things. And maybe this trio appeals to them. However, do you think this is nuts? Or do you think this is a good idea for somebody who... Do you think this fits... Now, granted, this isn't like they have like... let me finish. They don't have like 100 of these. So it's not like... They have all of these cars to lease to people, and they're trying to fill this quota. This is probably... They have 3 of these, and they're looking for that one.
That's what I was going to ask, too, if they had multiples in it.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't describe if they did. However, I'm sure they'll find their one. But if you take... Not even one step back. The saying's like, oh, take a step back and think about it. Take 3 steps back. Does this make sense, though?
That does if you're not wanting to be a collector, but be like of the collector realm, because all these cars are something that's unattainable.
Yeah,
for a lot of things, like just limitability, and then just finding them and then good shape and all that stuff.
Yeah, because these are 3 special cars.
Yeah,
like there's no doubting that. We have a '58 Speedster to reflect.
Super rare.
Yeah, '73 RS, a real one.
Super rare.
And then a 918 Spider.
Still rare.
Yeah. So that's. I mean, you're really covering a lot of bases, so there's obviously some thought process behind this. Let's play devil's advocate for a minute. Do you think the people or the company behind this, is this maybe something their personal cars, and this is a way for them to kind of like whore their own cars out, and then maybe somebody to buy them? Is this what this move is?
Like a share service and then the option to buy, lease to buy. I mean, maybe. But I think they have a bigger game ahead. I think they would expand this if this worked. I think this is their testing time where, hey, if we can do these 3 cars, which we know are ultimately special for all these scenarios, or maybe we have the guy that does all 3 or the lady that does all 3, maybe we expand this. Maybe it scales to something different because there's no one out there.
Maybe let's see what this develops into.
Yeah, Porsche's kind of doing that whole subscription service, so maybe they were kind of wanting to piggyback off that and say, well, let's take a little different aspect to it and do a high-end supercar, unattainable speedster, unattainable RS, and see if those people like that and then are willing to pay this much a month, because these cars you can't just... it's way cheaper than buying these cars.
You're right, because you have to hunt them down to begin with. Let's not let's not discredit the time that takes to find these.
I would hope that all these are going to be in immaculate condition, all those
Of course
things,
they would be.
and
Of course they would be.
Upkeep and all that, but yeah.
And then not to mention the flex that comes along with that, right? Like wherever you decide to take these, Ren Sport, Cars and Coffee, whatever event you decide to take these to, whether, even if it's none of those, like wherever you want to go to.
Foreign, whatever.
Yeah, dinner with your significant other, wherever it may be. You have full access to all three of these. And I would imagine if you're making a significant income, this is peanuts for you at the end of the day. And I think this could appeal to somebody who's really out there crushing it financially, right?
I think so. I think you're right. I mean, it solves the problem of having to, like you said, the time to find something, to test the waters, and to come back and figure out if I want it or I don't want it. If I do want it, I get to buy it.
Yeah.
That's the best part about it, is I'm not losing money at the end of the day, but just renting the car. I get the time to spend with the car and see if I like it. And if I really do like it, at the end of the day, I make it mine, versus just kind of testing it out and just it goes away.
Yeah, and let's not cut the shit around this, because this can turn somebody who's kind of like making a good living, and who I think about this is not fair, but like somebody who's maybe a younger tech guy who doesn't know dick about cars, right? And maybe he enters into this opportunity to get these three cars, and maybe he does like cars to a certain degree, but has no knowledge about them. This instantly gives him Porsche credit, right? Because you have like all layers of Porsche, and now instantly you become this, hey, this guy, he's got his shit together. He's got a 58 Speedster, he's got a 70, because no one's going to come to say like, oh, well, I'm just leasing these cars. They're all three of these cars are in his garage.
Yep.
And he has an option to buy these cars, or she has an option to buy these cars. I mean, it's the ultimate flex on the backside of this.
Well, and the easy way to test without having, like you said, without having to go and hunt these things down, of what you like. No matter how much expensive you think this is, it's not for a certain caliber of person. It's just a everyday thing, and it's an easier decision to make.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's for a very, very small amount of people, and there's probably like a very limited quantity of people that would be very interested in this car.
Would there be a three that you would put in here besides these three? Would there, if you built the package?
Yeah.
I mean, we're race car guys, so that's different. Or GT
I think
cars.
It's tough because that's a great question.
Would you go 550 Spider and then go GT3 something?
Yeah,
TRS,
I think that's a really, really great question you bring to the table, because maybe I wouldn't discredit the first thing, because Speedster's always classic, but classy. 550 Spider is really tough to get a hold of. But something in the mid-year range, I would have maybe something like even more rare than a 73 RS that would maybe want to put me in the game. But I think this company at that same time is they're trying to protect themselves by not going ultra rare, because I would think of something in that range like we've talked about before, like the Pablo Escobar car or something like something to that range, like maybe an IROC car.
Specific can be on the street.
Yeah, like an IROC car, that's even more flex. It doesn't even necessarily be to that car, but there's a lot of stuff, maybe something ultra rare, maybe a 934, that's the one Jerry saw at Luftgekühlt that he had, a one of 14 or 15 that was built, or
Kramer Street car, or something like that.
Or Singer even.
Yeah, Singer is a good call.
Yeah,
Singer might solve a lot of that problem.
Yeah, so it bridges a lot of gap. And then and I know where they're probably going with 918 because it's PDK, so it's safer maybe as a company from a safety standpoint. Yeah. But I'm thinking more maybe Carrera GT.
I think they were trying to hit all the aspects of kind of top tier.
That's what it
seems to me. But yeah, I agree with you.
But I feel at this point, if I have to think modern Porsche, the most ultimate car for me, modern Porsche-wise, would be Carrera GT. Even to this day, even with the 918 existing, I don't care about performance numbers. I'm talking about driver enjoyment. Driver enjoyment, where you're rowing through gears. And let's be honest, people buy GT3s manual not because they're going to be the fastest out there, because they want to row through the gears. They want to take it to that red line and they want to shift it.
Yep.
And I think that maybe this if you and I were doing this, maybe we could shake it up a little bit and do that. But on the flip side, maybe they're being business savvy because at the same time, they're just like, look, here's the deal. Like, we don't want you rolling through the gears on a Carrera GT because you're going to destroy the clutch.
Because we want it back. Well, what if they don't buy it? Then you're stuck with something that could be ruined.
Yeah, you're stuck with a $50,000 clutch replacement. And this ass clown who doesn't know how to shift it because he's just trying to flex has ruined the car. So that's there.
Yep.
So I get maybe where their headspace with this is. It's maybe you have to, and that's what sucks about these kind of models. You have to balance business, safety behind smarts and enthusiasm.
But it's also the first iteration of it too, though. They could go with these 3 cars and go either this worked or it didn't work, or what do you want to see more of?
That's true.
Or did these not
we
fit?
can see how well this does or doesn't do, right? And then maybe we'll see more of this. Maybe,
but then why wouldn't?
Maybe I can lease these 3 cars out. Maybe I can lease my Turbo S, my 964, and the Safari out, right? And who wants to take them?
If there was a series, if there was something like a Toro for Porsches to do it, but why wouldn't Porsche be doing this? I mean, they're already doing a subscription service. Why would they kind of go? We got some stuff hanging around.
It's probably too much of a pain in the ass for them to manage, and there's not enough meat on the bone for them.
Maybe not. Yeah,
that's what I think. Like, what's the point for them? Let the aftermarket people handle that.
We have an exit idea then.
Yeah, let the aftermarket people fight over that scrap.
All right, Toro for Porsche is coming. Yeah. Watch out. PCar Talk.
Done.
Hosting it out.
Interesting, nonetheless. Let's move on to a next topic. Sebring. Obviously, you're listening to this on a Thursday.
12 hours, 69th annual.
Yeah, it's happening this weekend.
Yep.
Clearly, what is it? WeatherTech has learned from Daytona.
I think they're bringing out 2 cars.
No, they are running 2 cars. They have announced their teams. So they've learned their lesson from the other German car that tried to take them down. Yep. Speaking of BMW, who punched them in the rear at the beginning.
BMW.
So they're going to run 2 cars at Sebring, and I think for the rest of the season, good for them on doing that. Aaron and I will not be going to that race. The reason behind that is diluted in a way, I guess. I'll let you talk about your reasonings behind it, and I'll elaborate behind that. Why aren't we going to Sebring this year?
We're not the biggest fan of that. I mean, the track itself is okay, and it would be better if there was more experience involved behind it. As if we had to walk the track, we got to see the cars, there's a lot of things that still are kind of.
And that's more of a recent development, though. That's like a COVID. That's a COVID thing.
But otherwise, it's just dusty. It's hot. It's not the best vantage points unless you're on top of the whole all over all the pits and the paddocks. It's okay. It's not. It's just not the best track. I mean, that's where.
So I'll close with what Aaron's saying. Aaron is basically saying it's a great driver's course because I'm sure whether or not you're an enthusiast and you've read about this, and whether or not you've been on it in Sebring, and I've been on Sebring, it's a challenging course for a driver and a challenging course for a team. And there's no denying that.
No.
On the flip side of that, from an enthusiast standpoint, to actually watch an endurance race at Sebring is very convoluted. And what I mean by that, there's only several vantage points to actually watch this race from that actually looks nice to enjoy. And to watch a 12-hour race while you're there, and if you've never been to Sebring, it's basically 2 fucking hours in the middle of nowhere fucking Florida, and there's nothing else around Sebring other than Sebring. And there's so many drivers that talk all this shit about oh, it's so great, it's all that, and I'm not discrediting what they're saying, but they're driving. Yeah. So they're in the car, they're enjoying the experience. However, from a spectator standpoint, like Aaron said, it's a dust bowl. It's hotter than hell, usually.
Yeah.
And it's a pain in the ass to try to watch anything because there's nowhere to ever sit. There's nowhere to ever hang out. And it's actually, and I'm not trying to beat Sebring up. Don't get me wrong, so don't burn me at the damn stake for saying this. I'm giving you the no bullshit assessment because we have lots of friends that go. We go usually all the time. But I'm telling you that from years and years of being there, I'm over the shit because there's you're exhausted as a spectator by standing around all damn day watching these guys race, And especially with COVID involved, and you don't get to walk the grid walk, which is one of the best things, and being in the paddock and doing all those things, that being eliminated, you can save that shit for the birds. Like, I'd rather watch it on TV at this point.
And it's weirdly, like, the corral is also expensive. Like, it's more expensive than anywhere that I know about.
For a 12-hour damn race.
Yeah,
like, you and I pay corral passes for Daytona, and what is it, like Thursday, Friday, it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday corral, and it's cheaper than Sebring for one day.
Yeah, that's weird.
Which makes zero damn sense. You know why? Because no one ever pays shit to go to Sebring, and the only time they basically have anybody time to charge anybody thing is for the damn race. So they fleece everyone for that. Yeah. So essentially, you have an assload of people trying to go to a small place. And again, this is no knock on Sebring. Don't take this the wrong way where I'm trying to beat the shit out of Sebring. It really isn't. I'm just giving you a personal opinion. I understand Sebring is super historic. Yeah. I like history. Don't get me wrong. But history can be watched on television.
It can be. I mean, we have friends with RVs and stuff, so it makes it. I mean, it's a different experience if you have enough friends and cover.
It's just a damn lot of effort for people to go there. Yeah. And then now, especially, okay, I've already mentioned the COVID thing. So, like, people haven't even wrestled in the last couple years. I'll mention another thing. No one is putting up any type of manufacturer booth anymore, basically, other than, like, Lexus, Corvette, and, like, Porsche doesn't put a booth up anymore. Mm-hmm. There's no, like, fun fan interaction shit, like, for people to go to anymore. Yeah. So, like, what are you really doing there? Other than getting sunburnt.
100% all the time.
And being exhausted to go watch
heat stroke.
Basically, okay, so these guys are running what, sub 2 minutes or around 2 minutes, so you get to see like 7 seconds of them to go by at whatever corner you're at. It's exhausting.
Yeah, it is.
And we're big race fans, so I'm not trying to like beat the shit out of Sebring, but I'm telling you, Sebring, like, Daytona is a lot more fun place to watch a race.
I think so too. I think the vantage points, and then the other thing he was leading to was the watch party thing. And I'll set something up. I've looked at Discord, and I've looked at a couple other things, or at least I'll just point to a stream that's happening. Yeah. I'm sure that you two will have one.
Yeah,
I'll be in a chat or something.
Maybe we'll try to do that. We'll try to do a watch party for everybody to see.
Thing. We can do something.
Either way, if we don't do it, watch it at home. You're not really missing a whole lot.
Be a live webcam.
You're missing a sunburnt and dust and trashy people, essentially.
It'll be live 12 hours.
Exactly.
Push lights.
Moving on. But before I say that, best of luck to all the Porsche teams.
Yeah, for sure.
We still care about it in the sense of like, I'm just giving like
Faf, Rights, all those guys.
Yeah, I'm bitching and moaning because if I was in a car, I would love Sebring, but at the same time, we're not in a car, and that's reality. So there's a lot of Porsche teams racing out there. It's going to be a lot of fun. When you're on track, it's a great place to be. When you're just watching, it's a very mundane place to be.
That's why we recommend HSR so much.
Yeah. Enough said with that. Best of luck to all the Porsche teams that'll be there. It's supposed to be great weather this weekend. Yeah. I'm excited for them. I hope we no rain in the forecast, which is rare. So it should be a great 12-hour race. Hopefully we don't get punched in the back by a BMW scumbag team, and we'll get to do what we need to do. However, moving on. We mentioned it earlier. Pablo Escobar IROC is for sale for $2.2 million through the DuPont registry. Only ever made 15 of these vehicles in the entire IROC series. The interesting thing about this is if you don't know about the IROC series, there's a specific series made in the 70s for these vehicles to race. Porsche sanctioned it. They built 15 of these cars to go race against each other with different teams all across the world, basically to duke it out with one another. This is one of those cars from that sanctioned race that has worked its way into private hands over time, like most race cars end up doing. I think I want to say Pablo Escobar is probably the third or fourth owner on this car. He wasn't even like the initial owner, obviously, because then he took the car and did some stuff. But it's brought back to its IROC underpinnings, let's say. But it's selling for $2.2 million. It's special enough as it is, not even being a Pablo Escobar car.
It's being an IROC car.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, anything that low of numbers. I mean, 15 made worldwide. It doesn't matter what brand or manufacturer.
And then it raced too, so
yeah,
it's awesome.
Yeah, and it has tons and tons of race accolades. It really is. It's Phil DePaldi, all that stuff. Like a lot of race pedigree behind it before he even got his hands on it. This is prior Pablo. But with that being said, it has a lot of prominence behind it. Do you think being a Pablo car is a positive or negative? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think being a Pablo car is a positive in the aspect of it definitely brings the press, or it just brings, I don't know, I feel like it's even though, I mean, he probably wasn't a good guy,
He wasn't.
As his history would say, it's still a prominence factor in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of those things like, oh, cool, this guy owned it, you know this person. Yeah, I think it's a cool factor on the list. I don't think, I mean, obviously he wasn't like a prominent racer or anything like that. He's known for what he's known for.
Do you find it interesting, not even just Pablo, but Paul Newman, James Dean, all these people, even Seinfeld, do you find it interesting that there comes a price tag with celebrity ownership to a specific car? Meaning, like, let's just throw a hypothetical car out there, like Jerry Seinfeld owned a 993 manual C2, not a special car, tons of run-of-the-mill, let's say it's black with black interior, but that. Seinfeld owned it. Mm-hmm. Now, let's say going rate for that car is $75,000 market value. You and I owned it, depending on mileage and ownership and maintainship. Jerry Seinfeld owns it. Now it's worth $175,000. Do you find that to be interesting, that just because someone else owned that car, it has a premium?
I would still say it's a prominence in a sense, but then if I felt like if Jerry owned it, then there's a different level of ownership at that point for that car. Like, even if it was just Joe Smo that owned it, maybe he wouldn't go to the level of detail of upkeep that Jerry would in that sense. But I mean, I guess it would be per person that owned it. But yeah, I still think that it still speaks to what everybody likes, and that's a story.
Yeah.
And that's the story that you get to tell afterwards. Not like necessarily that how Jerry took care of it or what he did with it, but just that he owned it or somebody else owned it, or that's that story that you get to tell.
Yeah, I agree with the second part of what you just said, because the first part about that is you and I could spend the money to own, like, we could prove it by documentation.
Yeah.
So I think the first part about it is just because they're a celebrity, like, it could be even just that guy could scumbag the car even more because he's so-and-so. Yeah. And not maintain it as much. And because he has 150 cars, he doesn't need to maintain it because he doesn't even drive it. So what? He put an oil change and, like, Jerry owned it, so now it's more special.
It's Jerry's oil change.
But, and I hate to use his name or whoever. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, Aaron and Mike own the car, and you can prove it by documentation. That doesn't mean it's, like, less maintained. And I'm trying to argue your point, but I do agree with the second part about that. But I feel like a maintained part can be proven. I mean, like, I approve my, or you bought it right with all the receipts, and I think regardless of who owned it, like, that can be proven. I think some of these things, and, like, to all the listeners, don't be that guy or girl who ends up paying a significant premium just because somebody else owned the car, because at the end of the day, like, I think you're being screwed over at that point, because who gives a shit if Magnus owned the car or Steve McQueen owned the car? Like, even when his Rolex, when he's talking about, like, oh, well, that was Paul Newman's Rolex. Okay, well, great. Like, why does that make that worth more?
I mean, that's the only
it's the same. It's the same fucking thing as something else that was built that year. Like, and I agree with the second part of what you said, that there's a story associated with that, that's where like I'm piggyback on. Like, maybe there's a little bit, but I feel like there's a huge delta involved in that. It's not like, oh, you own that car and, like, on normal market it sells for $75,000, and, like, because Aaron owned it, it goes for $100,000. No, it's like a massive amount of money. Like, there's there's another $100,000 slapped on the top of it because you owned it.
But there might be, but that's always going to be the case, though, forever, eons on, because if Jerry owned it or whoever owned it or Magnus owned it, it's still going to have that story, and he's still going to own it, and or still have owned it, and it still gets perpetuated forever.
Yeah.
And so that adds on that whatever that person.
I guess I'm just never a buyer in that situation. Just because like I see that, I'm like, I don't give a shit if you own the car.
Yeah.
Like, just show me the records. And like, you're charging more because you owned it, then I'm out. Like, because that's not what the car's worth. But I just found it interesting that like people will literally sign up to get in the death line to buy this car as quickly as they can just because so-and-so owned the car. Because let's be real.
Well, it's the story they want to tell.
None of these motherfuckers know that person personally.
No.
But they're like, oh, well, it was a friggin' Magnus Walker car. Oh, it was a damn Jerry Soundfield. Oh, did you ever meet the guy? Or do you even know him personally?
Might have been a handler, but you didn't meet
You don't know him. Yeah. You don't know him for shit. And then you paid it at the $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 premium because he owned it? And I think what the real reason they pay that is, let's be real, it's not because they want to own it and they feel like, oh, that they want to pass that on to the next person
to get that premium.
The residual. That's what it really is.
Yeah,
it's not because they want it. They want to be able to charge the next person for that. And that's the reality.
Yep, I see that.
And I think it's total bullshit. But anyways, do you, like circling back to close this out on the Pablo thing, do you think this car is worth $2.2 million?
I mean, it's an IROC car in general, so I think it's worth a good amount of money. I don't know, 2.2 is the number.
I think it's I think it's a heavy duty car because it's a 1 of 15. Yep. To put it in perspective, I think, and it's not deliberate, but his name keeps coming up. Seinfeld's IROC that he owned went for like 2.3.
So it should be close then. Maybe that's what they're judging it on. That can be. I mean,
do you think there's bad karma buying this car because it's a Pablo car?
No.
Yeah, I don't think that either. I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters. I think it's pretty rad that it's a Fittipaldi car from the beginning.
I think
that gives it the most prominence in my personal opinion.
That's where
because Fittipaldi's a legend.
Yeah, Pablo didn't do any of that stuff.
I think this is just being like thrown on like, oh, Pablo Escobar. I was like, who gives a shit that Pablo owned this car? Like, Fittipaldi owned this car. Like, that's the way this should be like actually paraded, in my personal opinion. Yeah. This should be paraded around as like, it's a Fittipaldi car because that guy's a legend. Yeah. So like, let's just keep it at that. Is it worth it? I guess we'll see. If it sells, I guess we'll see what it's about. Who knows what the hammer price is, because it's not going to auction. So I mean, it's on a due point, like asking point. Okay. It may end up there someday, but it's not there yet.
So is the reserve 2.2 or
not reserved? That's asking.
Asking, okay.
Yeah. So we'll see. And us cretins out there will never know. So we'll see.
We'll watch. Michael tell us.
Yeah. I won't have the inside info on it, but we'll see what happens. Let's take a break, and then we'll come back and close out.
All right.
Thank you guys listening to PCar Talk so much. We appreciate you guys so much. I can't say that enough. Everything we're doing is trying to bring the community closer together. We definitely appreciate that. Also, when you go onto YouTube, if you could subscribe, maybe pass it along, make a comment. We really appreciate that. Now back to the show.
All right, we're back from break. Let's close this effort out. So, there's a UK-based company taking 964s. Imagine that.
964, you say?
Yeah. Making them full EV conversions.
It's only a matter of time.
Jeez. Okay, so let me give you the basis behind what it's bringing to the table. Not going to mention the company because they're not giving us any money, so they don't get free advert here. However,
no clout here.
It's given 150 miles of range. Apparently, it's 500 horsepower, 360 foot-pounds of torque, 0 to 60 in 4 seconds. So they're giving them Golf livery inspired. They've approved it with Golf to spice these EV cars up.
Oh, spicy.
Yeah, it's actually Sriracha Boys. So they don't have them with any motor noise. Now, we've seen other companies... Like, this isn't the first time an air-cooled... Yeah. However, this is the first time we've seen anybody really doing this to 964s, because, like, all these other companies are kind of doing this with older models and doing stuff like that. Like, giving you the flavor of an older car, but giving you an EV sense. As we know, there are a lot of companies pilfering from the 964 range.
Yep.
They will go on to mention, clearly, if you're a listener and you're an enthusiast, or if you're not an enthusiast, it's pretty easy to figure out who is poaching 964s to do their business with.
Yep.
This is another company poaching on 964s in already a very, very meager market of 964s. Does this continue to kill off the NA 964 narrow body deliciousness that exists? Your thoughts on this?
Oh, I would say that it doesn't matter what kind of 964 it is at this point with the EV models, because they can turn anything to an EV. But if they only do narrow bodies, then yes, that kills it off a little bit. But it kind of opens up the scenario for anything. I don't know what the price point is or any of that stuff.
That wasn't discussed.
But what do you think? I mean, 0 to 60, and that's a lot of horsepower.
It is.
You're not getting that out of an air-cooled motor for cheap at all.
No, never. I mean,
That's a
we've talked about
motor.
this.
Yeah.
Like Gamroth is pretty much the master, and if
No,
the people that are
it's a
listening
Singer motor.
that doesn't know, Singer goes to Gamroth to build their motors, and you're looking at $100,000 to build a 964 motor that produces 400 horsepower, and this is 100,000. This is 100 horsepower less than that.
No.
However, what is the price on the sound of a flat six that makes 400 horsepower?
I think
That
it'd
is
be
the next
weighed
question.
differently depending on who you are to the car. Yeah, I mean, it's a different...
No. Play on that, because that's phenomenal. That's where I wanted to lead you into, because I think the people that are buyers on this car are the same Tesla type of video game, whatever you want to call them. Like, I hate to like silo them up, but let's be honest. These are the people that are not car enthusiasts to begin with.
But they like an i11.
But now they're tech people, because they're tech people. Let's just be real. They're tech people, and we've seen hundreds of thousands of comments. And I'm not saying you can't be both, but I'm saying the majority rules on this. Most of them are saying that, hey, I was not interested in any kind of vehicle prior to a Tesla. Now I'm interested in vehicles because of XYZ and the technology behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe these companies that are making moves like this are trying to prey on people like that, because let's be real, some of those tech people make a lot of money.
Yeah.
So they're saying, okay, $300,000-$400,000 for a classic with an EV technology. Are you interested now? And I think there is a demographic of personnel, male or female, that this would appeal to.
As a 964 owner, would you own both?
Hell to the no.
Even if one was... Hypothetically, if one was outlawed, so if your combustion engine was outlawed, and you could drive the electric version,
I'm telling you this right now, if I had fuck you money, I would not have a 964 that has an EV motor in it.
Okay.
I would kick my own self in the dick before I did that.
Right.
Multiple times. Because I own a 964. I would spend the Gamroth of $100,000 to do my car 400 horsepower before I did an EV motor in my car. Because I really feel like, and this isn't a knock on this UK-based company, like, I'm all for people trying to grind and grab dollars and do whatever that you need to do. Like, I have no, and this is not a shot on that. Entrepreneurship, I am a full, on-board sign-off on that. Yeah. However, I'm also a car enthusiast, and I feel like you're really discrediting the vehicle by doing that, because a real large part of what makes air-cooled cars and air-cooled is the motor.
Well, technically, it would still be air-cooled, but it'd be electric. But, I mean, do you think they're trying to get
it's the sounds, it's the feels. Like, there's noises an air-cooled motor makes. But, like, we rode in the Safari all night long tonight when we went out to dinner. It makes its own unique sound. Electric motor will never make those unique sounds.
It does, but then on the other hand is the generations that are coming up after us that don't necessarily know those sounds or care about those sounds. Do you think it preserves the 964 for those generations?
Fuck all that. I'm the old guy sitting on the porch with a shotgun in the rocker. Like, you're wrong. You're wrong. Okay. Because you're like, seriously, what if you're gonna put an EV motor? It's not preserving the car. You're preserving like a shallow hole of what the vehicle is, because that's not what it is. Okay, so aesthetically looking, why did you not take a G-body and just slap different bumpers on it? Why are you taking 964 to do that?
Yeah.
It doesn't take that to do that. If you're putting an EV motor in a car, you can put it in anything. You don't have to put it in a Porsche. Like, and you and I are Porsche fanatics, and if you're listening, you're also a Porsche fanatic. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense. I don't care how innovative and how progressive you're trying to be. The whole point of what we do and the point of the cars that we own, and just like we've talked about before, the current GT3 that's going to be coming out, the 992, it's going to be NA. The minute that thing goes hybrid, all of the other cars go up through the roof because we're naturally aspirated guys. An engine makes a certain type of noise that an electric motor, as much as the Taycan we have driven, and it sounds unique in its own way, and that's rad because it's new, and I'm okay with it because it's a new product, but they're not trying to front on something that's classic and change its DNA. I am not okay with that. And I don't know if I'm so biased because I'm a 964 owner. It has nothing to do with that. Even the guys who do it to early 911s, it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't. And I get there's a whole demographic of people that want to like change the world, and I don't want to get into that debate with like how all of that works, but everybody's like, oh, well, you know, we need to do ourselves all right by not making our footprint. You know, like there's so many other countries that deplete the atmosphere more than we do. And I don't even go down that path because that's not what we're about. We're a car enthusiast podcast, so I don't want to even take it down that route. But I feel like you're really, really ripping out the soul of the car when you do this. And that's just me. And listeners may agree with me, you may disagree with me. At the end of the day, I don't really care, because I think if you're an enthusiast, you're going to side with me on this, because it doesn't make sense. Even if you are a bone stock Porsche, it doesn't even have to be 964. If you're a bone stock 911 guy who's air cooled to begin with, regardless if you hop the motor up, even if you run a stock exhaust, that car makes a unique sound altogether. So if you rip that out and you put some type of goddamn 9-volt battery in this thing and it runs down the road, you've changed the DNA of it, and it's not the reason why you bought the car to begin with.
Yeah, I can see that. It may not even handle the way it should and all this other stuff, because now that the weight is up from where it would be, even though the power is up from where it would be, things like that, and there's no sound, which...
Well, I think these power numbers get released because they're trying to pad...
Yeah. The emotions.
They're trying to pad the fact that this thing is a drone.
Yeah.
They're like, well, it's 500 horsepower. It can do this. It's going to do that. Okay, well, what does it sound like? What kind of feels does it give you? 0?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Who fucking cares? Because at the end of the day, we all know a PDK transmission gets around the track faster, but why do people buy manuals? Because it gives them a different feel.
Yep.
That's the point of all of this shit. We're humans. We feel stuff. Like we're not drones. We're not robots. And until robots start driving these cars, and if you're robotic, maybe this appeals to you and you don't understand. Maybe the people who appeal to this type of car have never driven something it gives them a sound and a feel and a spine tingling. You've been it. I guarantee most of the listeners, because we're a passionate podcast, most of the people who have listened to this podcast have driven a manual transmission in their life, and they understand what that sound and that feel and all of that stuff that goes into that. And that's the reason why they own the car. They don't give a shit that it's a Porsche. I mean, we all gravitate to that because we like engineering at the end of the day. And again, this isn't and again, I didn't say who the UK the company was, because I don't want to like beat them up or bash them on this, but I just feel like I feel like you've made a Terminator out of this car, where yes, it dominates, yes, it kills, there's no doubt about it, it's fast, it does all of these things, but at the end of the day, is it about speed? Is it about numbers? No, we've talked about this many, many times before. Slow car fast, right? Yeah. Like guys at home 912s. Why do they own the 912? Not because it's fast, because it sounds good, it feels good, it has a certain smell. It makes them feel a certain way. I just feel like these electric cars are soulless.
I think they might get proved wrong too, with those e-fuels coming out. I think when Porsche releases them and they really do what what we think the e-fuel is going to do and not what other people kind of said. They'll keep a combustion engine and things like that without having the emissions.
Yeah, that's a great point that you bring up, because Porsche, and we've talked about this in the past, like Porsche is developing a massive undertaking to try to keep combustion engines on the road. And people think they're like, oh, well, they're going to make it just so hybrids. It's for all stuff. And don't be surprised. I don't know what the time frame is on this in the next decade or less, that you see maybe even a Porsche, so to call, like, I guess the best way to describe it so everybody understands it is maybe a Porsche gas station. And it's not just for Porsches, but it's for combustion engine cars to go run on this e-fuel so they can meet emissions and still be legal on the road. There's a huge undertaking by Porsche behind the scenes that people don't realize, that obviously if they're doing that, they believe in the combustion engine and they want to keep their combustion engines running for a long time. And 75 to 85% of their current fleet, not even just modern, but through the inception of their vehicles, are still on the road. So kudos to them as Porsche as a brand to think about the longevity of that, because if they don't think about that, the EPA is not thinking about that. No one else is thinking about that. The fuel companies aren't thinking about that. So if we run to this point where only EV cars are legal, all of us, including myself, and probably a large amount of our listeners, our vehicles that are combustion engine, including you, are going to be obsolete.
Yeah, I think that's the way they can keep everything on the road, or at least a solution that's outside the electric, just trying to electrify everything.
Yeah, I think I don't think it's a forever solution, but I think it's a bridge solution, right? Like, I think what they're trying to do, and maybe some of the listeners like, well, yeah, that's not going to, like, eventually that there's going to be EV, it just takes over. You're absolutely right. I think that day is coming, but I think what Porsche is trying to do with this e-fuel type of situation is,
of some sort.
Yeah, they're trying to bridge that, where maybe instead of it happening in the next 20 or 30 years, maybe it doesn't happen for another 150 years. Maybe it takes longer. Like, they're trying to put that Band-Aid on the bullet wound to say, yes, we understand this is inevitable, but maybe we can try to keep this going as long as we can.
We have 70% of EV cars, but we still have our stuff on the road, and we can survive for this if our guys are willing to. Our ladies are willing to.
And then maybe that stopgap with that e-fuel can develop into something else where they can get some type of law passed, or who knows what.
Yeah.
But maybe, like, what I'm getting at is it buys them time. It's a time buyer. So it's the Band-Aid on the bullet wound to say, yes, you're eventually going to die from this, but maybe we can figure out a solution in the meantime.
Yeah, but here's some pressure.
Yeah. Put some pressure on this. We'll figure it out. Here we go. Long term, like, to close on the 964, good for them for being entrepreneur to try to do something. I'm not trying to beat them up. I'm just a passionate guy about non-combustion engines. You know, it's just one of those things. It's, you know, you have an NA motor. It's just, it gives you different sound, different feel.
You'd rather be stock than be EV.
Yeah, I'm going to be that old grandpa sitting. I'm not kidding. I'm going to be that. I'm going to be on this. Hopefully, maybe someday when we're super old and be like, God damn it, I remember when we used to be able to buy these sons of bitches for like $18,000, and now they can't. I can't even drive this bitch on the road now. Like, that kind of crap. Yep. And then they're like, man, stop being a fuddy-duddy and, like, just get an EV car. I was like, I don't want to get a goddamn EV car. Like, I'm going to drive this son of a bitch. I bought this thing like, this is not the American way, okay?
Yep. Rocking back and forth in his rocking chair.
Exactly.
And wearing his motorsport
I wish
jacket.
they would come up here and tell me I can't drive this thing. I wish they would. You know, you had that wish factor. But, you know, and then my old ass end up in jail or something like that. And then, like, real sad
I knew I'd be here.
Yeah, real sad that I'm there, and then asking Aaron to come get me because he complied and I didn't. So, but anyways,
what about that?
That's the show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We got a great show coming out for you next week. Just remember, you know, support your Porsche people. Support us. We're out here grinding for you guys. Yep. We haven't missed a week. I'm gonna toot our own horn here for a second. We haven't missed a week, and this I'm going to jinx us probably because we'll end up missing one after this. It's like how you miss a field goal, right? This guy hasn't missed a field goal in 30 years. And then the guy's like, it's a 20-yarder, and he shanks it. We haven't missed an episode at Thursday from the inception of us coming out. So I just hope you guys as listeners appreciate that. And we appreciate you guys as listeners, and we appreciate all of our club members. We had a couple new club members join up. As we remember, like, we're only taking 100. We're closing in on that as we speak. And once we get 100, that's it. And we're donezo. And what I mean by that is there's a waiting list after that point. So go ahead and join the PCar Club while there's a few spots left. And we appreciate you guys, and we will see you on the next one.
Yep. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of PCar Talk. Connect with us on Instagram at PCar Talk or online at PCarTalk.com.